In the year 1912, a rare book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich was searching through a dusty collection in an old Italian villa when he found something that would haunt scholars for the next 100 years. It was a book, just a book, but nobody on earth could read a single word of it. Not historians, not linguists, not even the best codebreakers who ever lived. This is the story of the Voynich Manuscript, a 240-page handwritten book filled with strange plants that don't exist in nature, star charts that match no known sky, and an alphabet that has never been found anywhere else in human history. For over a century, some of the sharpest minds on the planet have tried to crack it. Mathematicians, cryptographers, even the codebreakers who defeated Nazi Germany's Enigma machine during World War II. Every single one of them failed. And the strangest part is this: the deeper people dig into this book, the less certain they become about what it actually is. Let's start at the beginning, because the story of how this book was found is almost as strange as the book itself. Wilfrid Voynich was a Polish-American book dealer with a talent for finding rare and forgotten manuscripts hidden across Europe. In 1912, he purchased a stack of old documents from the Jesuit college at Villa Mondragone in Italy. Buried inside that stack was a small, unassuming book bound in vellum, the treated skin of an animal commonly used for important documents in medieval Europe. At first glance, it looked like any other old scientific text from the 1400s. But the moment Voynich opened it, he realized something was very wrong, or very extraordinary, depending on how you look at it. The pages were filled with flowing, elegant handwriting, thousands of words written in a script nobody recognized. Not Latin, not Greek, not Hebrew, not any language that had ever been documented. The letters had curls and loops that resembled a language, but when experts tried to match the patterns to known alphabets, nothing fit. And the illustrations made things even more confusing. There were drawings of plants, dozens of them, painted in careful detail with roots, stems, and leaves. The problem was, botanists could not identify a single one. These weren't sloppy sketches. Whoever created them clearly had real botanical knowledge. But the plants themselves seemed to belong to no known species on Earth. Then came the astronomical section, filled with circular diagrams, stars, and symbols resembling zodiac signs, except the constellations didn't match any night sky pattern from history. And then, perhaps the strangest section of all, pages showing dozens of small, naked women bathing in green liquid, connected by tubes and pipes to what looked like biological structures. Some researchers believe this section relates to human anatomy or reproduction. Others think it's something else entirely. Nobody agrees. By the time Voynich died in 1930, he had shown the manuscript to top scholars across Europe and America, hoping someone could translate it. Nobody could. So the book passed from collector to collector, eventually landing at Yale University's Beinecke Library in 1969, where it remains today, carefully preserved behind climate-controlled glass, still refusing to give up its secrets. Now here's where the story gets even more interesting. Because in the 1940s, during World War II, something happened that nobody expected. The United States government employed some of its best codebreakers, the same people who had helped crack Japanese and German military codes that were considered mathematically impossible to break. These were geniuses, people trained to find patterns hidden inside chaos. They were given a copy of the Voynich Manuscript as a personal challenge, and they failed completely. Not because they didn't try hard enough, but because the manuscript didn't behave like any code they had ever seen. Real ciphers, even complex ones, follow patterns. Letters repeat in predictable ways based on the rules of the original language being encoded. But the Voynich script behaved differently. Certain letter combinations repeated far more often than they should in any real language. Some words appeared over and over in ways that didn't match normal human writing patterns. This led to one of the biggest debates in the history of cryptography. Is this manuscript actually written in a real coded language? Or is it something else entirely? An elaborate hoax? A forgotten dialect? Or possibly something created using a method nobody has considered? In 1969, a scientist named John Tiltman spent decades studying the manuscript and came to a haunting conclusion. He believed the text had internal structure and logic, meaning it wasn't just random scribbles. Something meaningful seemed to be encoded within it, but what that meaning was remained completely out of reach. Over the decades, theory after theory emerged, each one exciting, and each one eventually falling apart under scrutiny. Some believed the manuscript was written by Roger Bacon, a 13th-century English philosopher known for his interest in alchemy and science. The theory suggested Bacon invented a private code to protect forbidden knowledge from the Catholic Church, which at the time punished ideas that contradicted religious teaching. This theory was exciting, mysterious, and completely unproven. Others believed the manuscript was created by Renaissance alchemists, documenting secret medicinal recipes, hidden in code to prevent rival alchemists from stealing their formulas. This would explain the strange plants and biological drawings, but no historical alchemist's writings have ever matched the Voynich script. Then, in 2003, an even bolder theory appeared. A researcher named Gordon Rugg suggested the entire manuscript might be an elaborate hoax, created using a simple mechanical device from the 1500s called a Cardan grille, a tool used to generate seemingly complex, meaningless text quickly. Under this theory, the manuscript was never meant to contain real information at all. It may have been created purely to be sold to a wealthy, gullible buyer desperate for ancient secret knowledge. This theory gained massive attention because it was possible to recreate Voynich, like text, using the exact method Rugg proposed. But critics pointed out something crucial. The linguistic patterns inside the real manuscript were far more complex and consistent than anything produced using Rugg's method, suggesting real structure that a simple hoax generator couldn't fully replicate. So the mystery deepened once again. In 2019, radiocarbon dating on the manuscript's vellum pages confirmed something important. The material was created between 1404 and 1438, placing its origin firmly in the early 1400s, during the height of the Renaissance in Europe. This ruled out many later hoax theories because whoever created this book did so 5 centuries before Wilfrid Voynich ever found it. This single piece of evidence changed everything. If it was a hoax, it wasn't a modern one. Someone in the 1400s spent enormous time, resources, and skill creating something this elaborate. And that raises an obvious question. Why would anyone go through that much effort for nothing? Now let's talk about the plants, because this detail might be one of the most overlooked clues in the entire mystery. In 2014, botanist Arthur Tucker proposed that some of the unidentified plants in the manuscript closely resembled species found in Central America, plants that Europeans would not have known about until after Christopher Columbus's voyages. If true, this would place the manuscript's origin much later than the radiocarbon dating suggested, or possibly connected to early trade and exploration records that were later lost to history. This theory excited researchers because it offered a possible geographical origin, but other botanists strongly disagreed, arguing the plant illustrations were too stylized and inconsistent to reliably match any real species from any continent. Every time researchers think they've found solid ground, the manuscript shifts beneath their feet again. In recent years, artificial intelligence and modern computational linguistics have entered the picture, analyzing letter patterns at a scale no human codebreaker ever could. In 2017, computer scientists used pattern recognition software to study the manuscript's structure and found that it followed mathematical patterns consistent with real natural languages, specifically patterns found in Hebrew and certain Asian language structures. This suggested the manuscript might be an early attempt at what's called an artificial language, an invented system of communication with its own internal logic, similar to constructed languages created centuries later like Esperanto. If true, this would mean the Voynich manuscript isn't hiding a message written in disguise. It might be an entire invented language created from scratch by someone brilliant enough to give it real linguistic structure, for reasons we may never fully understand. And that theory might be the most unsettling one of all, because it means the manuscript may never be translated, not because the code is too difficult to crack, but because there may be no external key at all. The language could exist entirely within the mind of whoever created it, and nowhere else. So after more than 100 years of investigation, involving some of history's greatest cryptographers, linguists, botanists, and now artificial intelligence itself, the Voynich manuscript remains completely untranslated. We know when it was made. We know the material it was written on. We even understand some of the mathematical patterns hidden inside its script, but we still don't know what it says, who wrote it, or why. Maybe it's a forgotten language lost to time. Maybe it's the elaborate work of a Renaissance con artist. Or maybe, just maybe, it's something we haven't even considered yet. Something waiting patiently behind glass at Yale University, still keeping its 600-year, old secret exactly where it wants to stay.